Okay, so now we're ready to submit our object to Zelta for 3D printing. Well, you're going to hand them in, and I'm going to submit them, unless you're late, and then you're going to submit it yourself. But what we're going to do is we're going to need to get a quote first. So due at the same time as your submission, you'll also have to submit a quote to show that you've gone through all this process and that you've gotten the right kind of geometry. You've been able to kind of make sure that it's all ready to print, and that your scale is correct, and that you're submitting a file that is feasible under the conditions of the project. So to make sure we can do that, we're going to need to take our file, export it from Netfabb to make sure that our scale and everything is correct. We don't want to be taking the file that we have exported from Blender if we've made any changes in Netfabb. So now that we're happy with this file in Netfabb, I can select it here and I can right click and I can go export part as STL. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to give me some information about it. It's going to tell me the scale and everything. It's going to give me a place to submit to, and it's going to allow me to rename it. So I'm going to call this one print. And yeah, pretty much that's going to be it. As long as there's a good green tick there, then we're going to be happy with that. So let's click OK and export that. Now let's check our file size here. So if I go to desktop, 204, test STLs, we can find our print, and you'll see that the file size is 8 megabytes, which is fine. That's perfect. And if we go in here and we actually look at our triangle count, we've got 172,000 triangles there, and that's our kind of hitting our 8 megabyte size. So you can get away with quite a lot of detail. But I would highly recommend making sure that you're kind of floating around this kind of 150 to maybe like 250,000. As soon as things start to get over 500,000, then you're going to get towards the upper limits. And what is the upper limit? Well, if we go to Zelta 3D, we go to the website here. What I would do is make an account, because you might use the service again in the future, and it'll make the process of getting yourself a quote a whole lot easier if you have an account. But if we have a look at their 3D print upload page, you can see that it's a max file size of 60 megabytes. To get to this, go to the Zelta 3D homepage, if it'll take us to the Zelta 3D homepage, and click Start 3D Printing. And if you've got an account, you'll be logged in, and if not, it'll prompt you to create an account. Although you can get a free quote, as you might have seen me do in the lecture, but it's just easier if you have an account. Cool. So we can drag and drop our file here and just make sure it holds up to all of the limitations, basically the max file size, the max scale for certain printing types, and all of that. So if we find our file and we drag and drop that here, we have a little upload process, and then it's going to give us, it might take a little while to just generate, but it's going to give us this little preview here, and it's going to tell us exactly how much it's going to cost, in whichever material we've selected here. So you need to make sure that you have selected SLS nylon. Okay, this is not going. It's not going to. I'll send it back to you basically if this quote area here shows anything other than SLS nylon, and you'll miss the first batch of printing. Okay, so finishing white, I would leave that. We don't want to select anything else. It's just white. If you want to do dyeing or anything like that, you'll have to either order yourself, or do it yourself once the order gets returned. So here, yep, cool. We have a quote for $16. That's pretty good. In fact, that's really, really good. Sure, this isn't occupying the huge amount of space or the full 100 by 100 uh, uh, cubic millimeter file size or max scale, but you're wanting to work to a 1 to 10 scale, so it should be within a reasonable size of whatever 1 to 10 of your real world object is. So in this case, this coffee table thing is going to be 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters by kind of 45 high. So yeah, that's kind of a realistic scale because it would be approximately 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters by 45 centimeters. Cool. So hopefully that's all, that all makes sense. Now you can screenshot this page and you'll be uploading that with your wall thickness analysis to the submission alongside your final print STL file. If your file size is too big, so if at the stage here when we export our file, you have issues in that like the size of your file is over 60 megabytes, then you can remesh or reduce your file size in Netfabb. Now, one of the ways we can do it is by finding our remesh or manipulate mesh here. I think there's a couple of other ways to do it as well. Prepare. Yeah, I would probably just use the remesh option here or the manipulate mesh command here. So we can either select manipulate mesh here or under modify, we can also do it here. So if we click manipulate mesh, that'll give us a good preview of like what our mesh structure is like at the moment. And we can here, we can do a triangle reduction by setting kind of a few things. So like target edge length, that if we do this now, 85 millimeters as a target edge length is going to give us like 1 polygon remaining. So let's maybe reduce that down to 1 millimeter for now and hit calculate. And you can see it has reduced our mesh, but we've got really bad results up the top here. Like that's some really rough, pretty awful results there. And it's got us down to kind of 60,000 triangles, but 170,000 wasn't a problem in the beginning. So I would suggest, just using this process fairly sparingly, and if you're having issues with the polygon count, then starting with a reasonable edge length, target edge length. So maybe now we could go down to 0.5 of a millimeter and calculate that instead, and we could see what that'll do to our mesh here. Oops, maybe we need to just cancel that. Go manipulate mesh and try that again. So let's try 0.5 millimeters as our target edge length there. And you can see that we've gotten rid of a lot of that density and not lost too much of our definition. So at that scale, kind of an edge length, a target edge length of about 0.5 millimeters or 0.3, 0.2 will probably give you reasonable results. But again, it's going to depend on the complexity of that mesh. So you might have to do a little work if you've got a really high triangle count to get that mesh down to size. But again, it's going to be different for everybody. The best thing you can do is come to class and talk to us about it so that we can actually look over your file as it is and help you work on it. It's not gonna help if you just try and send us screenshots of stuff, it's probably going to be really tough for us to troubleshoot. So, make sure that you're really engaged over the next couple of weeks because it's one of the most crucial times. So if you do any of these manipulations to a mesh in Netfabb, um, generally when you hit OK, it'll ask you to remove the old part. I tend to not do that. I tend to try and keep everything uh, in a hierarchy so that I know what's good and what's not, basically, or like what my history of changes has been. When I select this part and go to where are we? Export part as STL. It's not going to export that other part with it. It's just going to export the one part I've got selected. So it's not going to be a big deal if you've got kind of a list of changes. It just means that if you make a mistake, you can go back without having to like re-import your file and start again. Um, so yeah, that's how this kind of section of Netfabb works. I hope that will give you enough to go on for making changes or verifying that your uh, STL files, that your meshes are printable. But again, the most important thing you can do is come to class and be engaged.